My name is Sandra Mack. I'm from San Francisco, and I would like to ask of each representative why they did not answer one of the questions, not one. You talked about Social Security in very general terms, supportable, sustainable, but that could mean anything. We all remember the Bowles-Simpson Commission that said they wanted to make Social Security sustainable by cutting benefits and raising the ages. Well, the question was about eliminating caps and expanding. That was not answered by either of them. Affordable health care, Medicare, getting rid of the single payer system. That was not addressed by either of them. The idea of capping, getting rid of the cap, that was not addressed. Long-term care was not addressed. Negotiating of drug prices was not addressed. I think you need to answer or at least direct some of your response to at least one of these. And I will say this also, particularly to Representative Senator Feinstein. Many of us in the room remember having to lug boxes of letters to her office to convince her to finally say that Social Security did not add to the deficit. So we remember that.
Yes, we do.
Next.
Santa Clara event. I'm going to send you a link to it.
Sure.
Ma'am, my apologies. I think there was some confusion. We were given 10 minutes to speak, and then I believe we're going to be given time to answer each of the questions because we did receive the questionnaire. So if you'd like, I can go through responses to the questions.
Yeah, that's important.
Yep.
Okay. Regarding Social Security being protected for today's seniors and strengthening it for the future generations, Senator De Leon believes in protecting what we have now and defending it. Like I said, SB 1234 here statewide is something that he could, it was a way that he could address Social Security and pass it here at the state level so that we can help defend, at least for our California seniors and retirees, the benefits that they have here. Does he support legislation that would increase the grant levels for Social Security and update the formula for the COLAs? Absolutely. Support legislation to eliminate the cap on taxable income? Absolutely. How would you put Medicare on stronger financial footing and protect today's seniors and future beneficiaries from rising healthcare costs? Here's his answer. Healthcare premiums are skyrocketing by double digits with each passing year, leaving too many Americans agonizing over how to pay for coverage while still meeting their basic needs. It is incumbent on those who oppose Medicare for All to also explain how working families will be able to pay for the status quo. A recent study funded by opponents of single payer showed that adopting the Medicare for All plan could save Americans up to $2 trillion over the next decade. The reality is a Medicare for All system is the only way to get healthcare costs under control. Switching to this system will save billions in administrative costs, give us the power to finally hold the drug companies accountable, and squeeze other savings out of the system. Americans are already paying for the cost of a single-payer system, but see none of the benefits in return. In California, Senator De Leon led the fight for Medicare for All, and in Washington will do the same. Getting it done won't be easy, but taking on special interests never is. Next question. Do you support efforts to expand Medicare to everyone from cradle to grave? Yes. Do you support legislation that would allow Medicare to negotiate for lower and fairer drug prices? Yes. Do you support efforts to expand Medicare coverage to include long-term care, both home and community, based as well as institutional care, dentistry, podiatry, vision? Yes. And actually, Senator De Leon authored legislation to increase the minimum wage to actually cover IHSS providers, the IHSS provider wage to 15, so that the formula includes a plan to bring them up to help IHSS providers, almost 500,000 of which are in California, to the minimum wage, which was a very hard-fought victory. Many cities in our county are facing a housing crisis. In our cities and counties, we see more homeless people, seniors, families, veterans, etc. The housing being built is for the very wealthy, and longtime residents are being forced out of their homes, apartments, mobile homes, etc. Here's his answer. The lack of quality affordable housing is a problem throughout the state of California. The root of the current housing affordability problem is limited housing stock and lack of low-income housing programs, both urban and rural, at the scale necessary to make significant progress in addressing our housing needs. A majority of renters, over 3 million households, pay more than 30% of their income toward rent, and nearly 1/3 spend more than 50% on their income on rent. In addition, California's homeownership rates are at the lowest point since the 1940s. That's why improving the affordability of workforce housing and securing additional funds for affordable housing is a strategic priority for me, for Senator De Leon. Federal funding for affordable housing comprises a significant portion of California's resources to support affordable housing. However, due to pressures to cut federal spending and reduce the deficit, federal funding for housing has declined in recent years, despite the increase in the number of severely cost-burdened low-income renter households. This needs to change. I will fight and rally support to stop the vote to cut resources. I will hold HUD and its administrators accountable using all available tools at my disposal. I support Proposition 10, and I support tax credit programs for low-income seniors, as well as housing rehabilitation grant programs at the local, state, and federal level for safe living conditions. I am particularly concerned about lead paint removal from older homes. Will you support efforts to increase federal funding to build truly affordable housing, rental and home ownership for the low-income residents of our country? Yes. Do you support the passage of the TPP and other trade agreements? I do not support free trade agreements. Free trade agreements focus on lowering tariffs, quotas, and regulatory barriers to trade between countries. Free trade does not focus on the equitable distribution of wealth. Rather, free trade agreements often reduce preferential policies for specific countries and industries, with the stated goal of improving the overall economic growth of participating nations. Instead, I would prefer to assess issues raised by the fair trade movement, worker protections, clauses, and human rights protections. Trade agreements should ensure living wages and safe working conditions in disadvantaged areas of the world, as well as empowering communities with long-term commitments and relationships. TPP, as proposed, does not do enough to be considered fair.
Yes.
Okay.
Some of that's not